I'm Christina Lee.
I'm Wicker.
I'm Maurice Garland.
And we're the producers of the Atlanta Is podcast.
And we just jumped off the porch with Dirty Glove Bastards.
In the A, moving plenty, yay. Riding on 20 blades, 20, 40 days.
Yes, sir. All right, y'all. We got Maurice Garland, Jewel Wicker, and Christina Lee, producers of the Atlanta Is podcast, jumping off the porch with us today. What's good with y'all?
Man, what's good with you, man?
Excited to be here. Yeah.
I'm excited to be on the porch.
Really
That's what's up. That's what's up. I'm excited to have you guys. It's always dope to talk to, have conversations with, people who also, do journalism and work in the space and understand, the space. And so, let me give you guys props. You guys are like real journalists.
Thank you.
Because there's a difference. There are a lot of bloggers, there are a lot of podcasters out here, and no disrespect to
for sure.
any of,
Absolutely.
those people, but then there are also journalists, people who like really do the research and enjoy doing that and really specialize in storytellers. And the three of you guys are that and have been doing that for a while. So just want to give you props and show love and just happy to have you guys jumping off the porch with us.
Appreciate you,
Yeah,
man.
we're happy to
From
be
journalist
here.
to
Super dope.
journalist.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go, that connection. So, Maurice, you've been, a friend to the platform, for a long time and well known just in this hip hop space and everything. So I just, want to start off by asking you, and being from Atlanta, how, did it feel when, you guys got the green light to actually develop this great podcast that you guys came up with?
Man, like from beginning to end, it felt like life's work. You know what I'm saying? Every once in a while, as a journalist, you get to tell a story that, means a little bit more than the next one or the other one. Because sometimes, in this game, you might just be interviewing somebody because I got the assignment. I have to do it.
Yeah.
Or I thought this was interesting at that moment. I want to do it. But then sometimes you get to tell stories where you're like, oh no, I know this one from beginning to end because I was there, I was in it. You know what I'm saying? Right. So it's like that's how it felt getting to produce, the Atlanta Is podcast series, man. So many of these stories were places that, and all three of us can say this, were places that, we set foot in, people that we've broke bread with, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it hit very, very, very close to home. So I just felt very privileged to be able to, tell this kind of story. I felt honored to be trusted with it as well. Cause that's one thing, anybody can tell a story. It's another thing if people are trusting you to tell that story, whether that's the listener that's gonna come back and tune in or the person that you're asking to sit down and talk to you. You know what I'm saying? You gotta have that kind of trust to get these kind of stories told, man. So like it was an honor and a privilege to do something like this. Like I said, it felt like I was doing my life's work with this.
Word. And we know Atlanta, has such a great influence like on the world, not just the country and not just in hip hop. This podcast tells like these different stories of the people and the places that actually birthed that influence. What was it like just being able to, tell some of these stories and actually dive in and even do the research to learn more about some of these stories?
I think I can say, at least for me, some of these stories were stories that I was interested in telling for a long time, or maybe I had told on a much smaller scale. And I had always been like, if I had the opportunity to develop this out and tell it in a bigger way, I would love to do so. But that doesn't always happen, right? Like and so it was really nice, like Maurice said, to have an opportunity where we could dedicate a full episode, sometimes 45 minutes, to one story and really be able to flush it out, have all these different characters and sound design and narrative storytelling behind it, because I think the stories deserve it. And I can't speak for Christina, Maurice. I know for me, though, some of these stories were stories that I kind of had in my back pocket for a long time, wanting to find the right way to tell them. So it was really cool when this presented itself, and it was an opportunity to do so.
Now, how did the idea or the concept evolve from the initial idea to the finished product?
That's an episode in itself.
So I first got a call about the podcast last September, so more than a year before it came out, we've been working on this. And it was originally Will Packer's idea, and it was called Atlanta Love Letter, tentatively. So he wanted to do a podcast that was a love letter to Atlanta and that really touched on its cultural influence over the past 30 years. And he just knew he wanted it to touch on different sectors of Atlanta. So maybe there's an HBCU episode, maybe there's a nightlife episode, maybe there's a church episode, right? But he didn't have much fleshed out beyond that. So then when I came on, and then Christina came on, and then Maurice came on, it was really up to us to say, we have some guardrails, but they're pretty loose, which is great because it gives us the opportunity to kind of really figure out what stories we want to tell. But from there, we really set out to say, like, what stories do we feel haven't been told as much? And especially not in this platform. So, right, folks may know Ludacris and they love Ludacris, right? But like for locals to be able to remember when he was on radio, but then also for people who maybe didn't know about his radio days, to learn about his radio days. Those were the kind of moments that we wanted to be able to have, where it was nostalgic and fun for the folks who knew, but then it also taught folks, a little bit about Atlanta and the people they thought they already knew really well, too.
Yeah, no, for sure. The episode about Ludacris and radio and Atlanta getting his first 24-hour radio station was so interesting because, I've known Luda and Shaka in different facets, but hearing the story and the way that you guys even positioned it, where, you guys painted the picture, it was like I could close my eyes and I could, I could see this radio station that was out in the woods, and they say they had the outhouse or whatever. I could like see that, and then Ludacris would come on and start talking, or Shaka would come on and start, talking. The way that you guys, were able to format it was, really dope as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot. It took a lot. And I will say there was some stuff we still weren't able to include. Like Chaka was involved in community radio as a college student, right? When rap radio didn't exist on FM, right? And so like there were some parts of the stories that we wish we could have told, but we couldn't. 45 minutes is still not a lot of time, but what we did get to tell was really, really fun.
Right. And Christina, I know that you worked on a YSL documentary. What is it called? The Persecution of Young Thug?
Yeah, King Slime, the King Slime podcast.
Yeah. What was it like coming from that, which is almost like a hip hop beats true crime type of documentary, to then being able to, tell some of these positive stories about the culture and what's going on here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think covering the YSL trial, we were working at a very breakneck pace because everybody wanted to know more information and more context, like in real time. And if you ever sat and watched those court proceedings, you needed context because I was always like, what the hell is going on here? Why is this so dysfunctional? So to be honest, to your point, coming out of that show, I did feel like it was a darker period where I felt like I had to focus more on some of these like negative aspects. So it was a change not only in terms of tone, but also in terms of pace. I think trying to make sense of the YSL trial in real time is not a feat I imagine on anybody. I know a lot of people did that, Joel included. But whereas here, having spent a year on this podcast, not to mention our own lived experience and our reporting experience, it's like we get to see the full picture and really make sense of it all. So even if there was a lot of stuff that we experienced in real time, now that we're equipped as reporters, we can tell the best possible version of that story that feels truest to everybody else who lived through it. Yeah.
Now, was there a particular moment or even a story where that happened where you guys were like, this story has to be told, like this, or this podcast has to happen,
I'll say Christina's episode, the one that came out this week, was one of those for me because her episode is really like zooming in on 2014 and specifically through the lens of department store.
Okay, yeah.
And I think nobody likes to age themselves, but like when we were thinking about it, I was like, y'all, that was 11 years ago. It was 10, 11 years ago. It was enough time away that it now evokes a sense of nostalgia and that we can look back on it with some context and really like we're not in the moment reporting on it, but we can look back and say, this is what it meant. This is how this elevated Atlanta rap. These are what those artists who started out at department store are doing for the culture today. And this is kind of the first time we've been able to do that with that era, because we're now far enough away from it to do so. And so I think, to Christina's point, that was really fun to watch her do, because we're looking back at, I'm like, I feel like that was yesterday. You know what I mean? But it wasn't, and so much has happened since then that only happened because of that era and because of those artists in department store.
And to that point too, like it was like perfect timing to a degree too, because
oh my God,
it's 10 years ago, so that makes it, nostalgic, but it's recent enough history as well. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times when you take on endeavors like this and you hear documentary and history, people just automatically start thinking about black and white photos, sepia tone videos, you know what I'm saying? People that's dead and gone, you know what I'm saying? It's like, no, like, a lot of the characters in this story are still here.
Absolutely.
The building that we're talking about is still there.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of these things are still relevant. So it was a recent enough history to where it's like we weren't going all the way back to civil rights era and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I had somebody a few weeks ago who was in town and they hadn't been here in a while, and they were like, man, is department store still popping?
Yeah.
Is it still?
Oh my God.
Edgewood was a time.
Man, like that era has come and go. And then when I was listening to that episode, like to your point, it happened long enough to where it is historical, but it feels like yesterday. Like Maurice, I've got a picture actually of when DGB did our second A3C show, and it was at department store, and I believe it was like you, me, and Fadia, and it was our free Ziploc show, so we all had the free Ziploc Mo shirts on, all that. But
I think we love to tell some of the older stories, but a goal that we had on this podcast was to also bring some of that forward to the 2000s, to the 2010s, right? To show that, like, as much as the younger artists of today are inspired by what was going on in the 90s, they were kids when the 2000s came out. They really look up to Sierra, or they really look up to G. You know what I mean? Like, that's nostalgic enough for them that it is also inspiring new generations, and we can kind of bring it forward too.
Now, many people outside and even inside Atlanta have these fixed ideas on the city. What does Atlanta aim to redefine or complicate about, like, some of those perceptions that people may have about the city or the culture here?
Well, I think one episode that does a good job at that is, I think episode 6, where we focused on Peter Street. That was an episode where we focused on what it's like to be an entrepreneur in the city. Because, a lot of folks, they move to Atlanta, man, I'm coming to Wakanda.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Everything's gonna work out. It's the Black Mecca. I can't fail. Yep. It's like, no, yes, you can.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we wanted to tell the story about what it was like to start a business, have a business, fail at something, have to deal with your neighbor about it, have to deal with the neighborhood association about it, like all these things that go into running a business in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? So I think that episode did a good job to the point you were saying about how showing the complications of what it's like to be here. I think the series in general does that too, because I think initially, as the trailers and the information started coming out, a lot of folks assume, they're going to be talking about music. It's about Atlanta music.
For sure.
And that's it. It's like, we're talking about music, religion, entrepreneurship. What else we talk about? Film, nightlife.
Right,
You know what I'm saying? We want to talk about a lot of things, not just the music story. Because, like, the music story has been told a lot, and it's still getting told. There's a lot more, music stories coming out now, but we want to take an opportunity to show the totality of Atlanta and not just, one side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like a lot of the stories that come out of Atlanta are extraordinary, but they're extraordinary because the come up is so scrappy. Like, just hearing about Will Packer and Ron Hardy's origins, the fact that they were trying to pitch the likes of Dominique Wilkins, that they were trying to pitch to Lil Jon, like, hey, I could be your next music video director. And Lil Jon was like, no, thank you. It reminds me.
I couldn't believe they told us those
I
stories.
cannot.
They were so, I was like, y'all are like running up on Dominique Wilkins in the club and being like, I need $2 million, or, trying to pull up pulling up on Jermaine Dupri's house and
Right.
being like, should we just slide our movie into his like mailbox? Like
Right.
they were hustling. I mean, that's the story of Atlanta though. They were hustling,
for sure,
right? So yeah, those are good ones.
Exactly.
And that episode was really dope. And that story that you were just talking about is sort of it makes me think about Spike Lee and how he got his start.
Yes.
You know, because he was going out and getting money from Oprah and getting money from, you know, these different celebrities and you know, rich people, bless you, to, you know, fund his, you know, his first films and
Right.
everything. I was telling Maurice before the cameras cut on that watching or listening to this, I learned so much. Like, I didn't know how much Dallas Austin
Yeah.
Oh my God.
had an impact on
It's so dope.
the Atlanta film industry and everything that he had done. And I didn't even know that Drumline was about his life.
Really?
Literally.
Yeah, that was something that I
It's just so fun. And we learned, Christina was in the studio with me when we did the Jason Weaver interview.
Yeah.
And I mean, I grew up with Jason. I'm a huge fan of Jason Weaver. And first of all, I didn't know he lived here. And so to find out he'd been here for 30 years was really cool. And then we're like, well, how did you end up in Drumline and ATL? And he was like, oh, I was chilling at my cousin's studio. I'm like, who's your cousin? He's like, Tricky Stewart. And I'm like, what?
Just casual,
What do
so
you
chill.
mean? And he's like, yeah, my cousin Tricky, I was at his studio and Dallas came through. And so it's just that's an example of a way in which like music and film and all these people, right place, right time kind of thing. But the Will and Rob story to me is an example of just because you're in a city where you got proximity to celebrities, you still got to get it out the mud and like nobody's going to hand you anything. You still got to kind of hustle and like make it happen. Yeah.
Right. Now, how'd you guys balance celebrating Atlanta with critiquing its contradictions?
Well, that's one thing that we wanted to do on purpose, because, you know, as much as we love where we're from and you know, and the things that we've gotten to witness here, you know, I don't think you're doing readers or viewers or listeners a service where you only tell the positive stuff. Like, everybody wins, nobody loses here, everybody wins, everybody gets along, everything is perfect. Like, you're selling a false bill of goods at that point. You know what I'm saying? So like, we wanted to tell, you know, fair stories, accurate stories, because I mean, I think that's where anybody will get inspired from. You know what I'm saying?
For
Where
sure.
they get like a fair, true account of the highs, the lows, the in-betweens of a place when they're learning about it or even considering coming here trying to launch their own thing. So like, yeah, we definitely didn't go into it with like rose-scented lenses. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't want to like, you know, like be overly critical. Like, man, don't come here, bro. This place is terrible. You know, we never do that, but we definitely want to like find that balance that you spoke to, where it's like, okay, here are the positive things that have happened, here are the great things that happened, but here's all the muddy stuff that had to happen for it to get to that point. Here's how that happened. It didn't just happen overnight. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't an easy button or anything like that. You know?
Plus, that's what it's just like to live in the city. Like, us being journalists based in Atlanta, we knew that if we didn't tell the complete picture, we were going to hear about it from somebody.
You was gonna get cussed out. Yeah, I think that was a part of complicating from the original idea of Atlanta Love Letter and saying like we can show love to the city and still tell complicated stories, right? We can still have complex characters and folks who do. Atlanta is an unserious place to me. It's a little silly, you know. And I said it as my home.
They
I
say
love it.
Atlanta's not a real
They
place.
said that people done said that to be at least 5 times today. So, but I feel like that's what makes me love it. That's what makes success possible. That's what makes the failures hit harder. Like, that's what makes it such a great city to live in.
Yeah. And do you guys feel like Atlanta storytellers are supporting other storytellers, like currently and even, you know, historically?
I think so. I mean, I can only speak from my perspective, even looking at the three of us and how, you know, we had relationships with one another long before we worked on this project. And so it's really cool for us all to come together with our different reporting experiences and lived experiences and be able to tell this story together. But I've only had that experience in Atlanta, and it's probably my favorite reason for reporting here, aside from being from here, is that I hear from people in other cities who talk about like competitive and meanness within like the scene and stuff like that, and I just have not experienced that. I've experienced support and love and like uplifting each other, putting people on, and like really sharing some of that. So I've only ever experienced that here.
I think, you know what I'm saying, the storytellers in the city support each other in a lot of different ways. Because, I mean, hell, we had to contact other storytellers to get certain bits of research. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Hey, man, you know what I'm saying? I saw you interview them for this. what did they say about that? You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, people still are like sharing information. You know, we share things, like for instance, like I invited you to say, hey man, do you know about this big crit thing happening? You know what I'm saying? So like we share information in that way. So it's like, who wants to be the only person there?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you want to make sure that, you know, your peers are also getting this information that you're privy to as well. So I think, you know, Atlanta storytellers, you know, do a good job at supporting each other. Plus, you know, I mean, Atlanta is a major city, but you know, the journalism game is still like a small part of it.
Tiny
So
community.
a lot of us like worked at the same place together at some point. A lot of us have gone to the same schools, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, you can't really try to, you know, make it something to where it's like, oh man, just cutthroat for everybody, you know what I'm saying? So.
No, for sure. I could appreciate I don't know if the word diversity is the right word to say, with the different episodes. You know, initially I thought that it was going to just strictly be about music and telling musical history, but then learning about Club 559 and how it, you know, changed hip hop in Atlanta and was this staple here on the West Side, to then learning about Peter Street, and even before it became affluent like it was. And it almost reminded me of when I hear stories about Times Square, 42nd Street, you know, back before it, you know, got all the shops and basically turned into like Disneyland up there, you know. So I could appreciate the different stories that were being told.
Because at the end of the day, man, like I've come to this realization, like, you know, now that the episodes are coming out, we went into it like Atlanta, but like as they're coming out, you realize like this is
Universal,
you know what I'm saying? Because like for that 559 episode, you know what I'm saying, I got friends from Birmingham, Nashville, Jackson, Mississippi. Man, we had a club like that. You know what I'm saying? You know, the church episode come out, we're talking about New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Decatur and Lithonia. Man, we had a church like that in Charlotte. We had a church like that in Texas. You know what I'm saying? So it's like these are still universal stories at the end of the day.
And I'm glad you just touched on that point too about the church episode. Talking about, you know, the like the preachers, and it what was the title? The preachers were the first influencers. That was so interesting to me. How does spirituality intersect with Atlanta's civic and artistic life?
I mean, you know, one of the people we had in that episode is the living embodiment of that. You know what I'm saying? Raphael, you know, we got to say his whole thing, like Senator, Reverend, Pastor, you know what I'm saying? Raphael Warnock, the Honorable. Like, this man is a preacher at Ebenezer who had no prior experience in public office. He enters a special election to be the senator, not the city council person, not the, you know what I'm saying, utilities officer, like a whole U.S. senator. And he wins the seat, you know what I'm saying? And then he doubles down and wins it again in the real election 2 years later. And it's like, man, this man ain't managed no neighborhood. This man, you know what I'm saying?
None.
He ain't been a mayor, he ain't been nothing. But he's a whole senator. So like that shows you the influence and the pull that a spiritual leader can have when it comes to the politics. Then another character in that episode, Zaytoven.
I was thinking about Zaytoven.
Yeah, you know, like we know him for, you know, all the things he's done with Gucci and Future, OJ and all that stuff, but this man still plays organ at his church every Sunday. And people are attracted to that about him a lot of times, you know what I'm saying? Because artists can go and get a beat from anywhere or anybody, but they're attracted to him like, man, I just want to be around this dude. You know, he don't drink, he don't smoke, he don't curse. I kind of want that around me as I'm making this song about drinking, smoking, and cussing.
But you also hear the Southern church influences in his beats. Because he came from that, and that's where he learned to play, and that's where he, you know, plays primarily. You can hear that. You hear the organ. So yeah, I think it's influential.
Yeah, I know everybody's going to say that they had a church like New Birth in their respective city, but respectfully, I don't think when Maurice is talking about watching Kirk Franklin and Zaytoven is talking about how because initially, one of his very first gigs was playing with his brother who was rapping at New Birth. I did not understand that. To then get to Jamal Bryant's story. Silly me, I've only watched the Real Housewives of Atlanta franchise, not the other one. So I had no idea this man existed until Jewel had the privilege of telling me what this man was about and how he exists.
Very influential pastor who spearheaded a boycott against a major retailer and is also being dragged on reality TV for his relationship. That is very Atlanta. That's a very Atlanta thing.
So the fact that Maurice got to profile Jamal Bryant in the midst of all this is crazy.
And that's the thing too. Like these stories felt like your life's work. Cause like I grew up going to that church. So like that story had a direct connection to me as well. You know. So.
Yeah. Why do you feel like preachers were the first influencers?
Nah, because I mean, when you think about specifically, you know, like the black experience in America and in Atlanta, like these were the people that were getting folks out to march in the streets against injustice. You know what I'm saying? These were the places where folks were going for a hot meal when they couldn't get nothing, or you know what I'm saying, a place to be at when, you know, they was out on the street. These are the places where, you know, if you had a tough week, where can I go to get some sanity or some calmness on Sunday after Monday through Saturday and kick my ass? You know what I'm saying? So it's like these are the original influencers in that regard, because anything that they would say to you in church, you're taking that with you back home if you're paying attention. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to have that inform your decisions, you know, as you go out throughout your week. So that's the idea that we was exploring. Because, you know, today, influencer, you know,
can mean a lot of things.
Hate on them. You know, a lot of influencers are just like, buy this, buy that, go buy this, go buy that. You know what I'm saying? But it's like when you think of the preacher's influence on the black community, you think about the things that they were influencing people to do. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, go out and speak against injustice. You know what I'm saying? Go out and try to change your life. Go out and be a part of your community. You know, voting drives were happening in that churches. You know what I'm saying? So much community organizing was happening with the preachers in the lead. So that's what we say when we are saying, you know, preachers were the original influence.
But I think also because influencing has changed and society has changed, preachers have started to have to explore different forms of influence into where they on TikTok now, or they got a podcast and they interviewing Ray J, or you know what I mean? Like, because they have to meet people where they are becoming traditional, like modern influencers too, because that's where the audience is.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then even, you know, the ones that you would see on TV back in the day, and some of them would have commercials and things like that. So, no, the tie-in definitely makes sense. And a lot of conversations that I have with people here on this porch, church comes up, you know, several times. And I found that some of our most prolific artists, whether you know it from their music or not, grew up in the church or have that background, and may have played an instrument in the church or something like that. So.
Yeah, like, you know, they learn to play the instrument. They get the confidence of being on stage. They get their first audience from the community and the, you know, people in the pews. You know, so a lot of people, you know, get their start there. It reminds me of something that Jermaine Dupri was saying about, man, the reason that nobody can't sing no more because
they ain't in the church.
They ain't in the church.
Yeah,
you know
right. They done left the church, so it don't sound the same.
There's no training.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And the podcast features, I mean, some of everybody from, you got Ludacris, Jason Weaver, Sleepy Brown, Shaka Zulu, Zaytoven, Maya Bailey, Key, DJ E Sud, DJ Drama, Anicia, members from Earth Gang. I mean, you guys were able to, you know, pull in so many, you know, good people, good voices. And I know I didn't even mention, you know, all of them, but what was that even like, just being able to connect with so many of these like important figures in shaping the culture here in Atlanta?
Fun.
Yeah.
So much fun.
You're
so
like
much
one word.
fun.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and I think it was rewarding for them on the other side, because we got to talk to them about aspects of Atlanta that I think they were excited to or had no idea that they even wanted to talk about, right? So bringing Jason Weaver into the studio, for example, he could talk about, you know, being Simba all day long, but he got to talk about specifically the growth of the Atlanta film industry from his vantage point as somebody who was like an early champion of it all. We bring Earth Gang into the studio, right? And it's like they could talk about any and everything, but I was like, okay, we're gonna talk about department store and Edgewood Avenue around this time. And they were like, bet, that is the easiest thing in the world that we can do. Like, why didn't you ask us sooner? So I think seeing their enthusiasm made us really excited and gave us a lot of confidence to pursue the stories that we were pursuing, because it was like, these were stories that were waiting to be told.
Yeah. Even with the 559 episode, getting to ask Ray Murray and Sleepy Brown of Organized Noise about 559.
559,
And they're like, man, I used to be in that place was rowdy. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And it's like, not everybody's going to think to ask them that, because
Exactly.
when you think Dungeon Family, they're from Atlanta, obviously, but
Right.
you know, when you think 559, you thinking, you know, the organization,
Yeah.
Lil Jon, stuff like that. You ain't thinking Goody Mob Outkast. But it's like, no, why would they not
They
be
were
in there
there.
too?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So getting them to open up, like, hell yeah, man, I've been wanting to talk about that place.
I haven't heard They Don't Dance No More the same.
I
ever
know since they told us that.
Ever
Yeah.
since.
Yeah.
Like, that episode really opened up my eyes to
We-
how that song exists and
We
why.
asked Ludacris if he remembered keeping that girl out of jail because she got into a fight.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
were like, do you remember? We played it, the audio for him, and he was like, I was in the club every day. Many fights, many clubs. He didn't remember it, but it was just really funny to ask. And I don't think people realize how young Ludacris was back then. Ludacris was not
Baby.
old enough to be in them clubs, right? He was just Ludacris.
Respectfully.
And so it was just really, it was funny to watch him show up with broccoli sprouts and coconut and like be on his health kick, because we know the Ludacris that was in the clubs every night and drinking.
Chicken and
getting-
beer.
You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? Like, and so
Right.
it was really fun to relive that, even though he's in this kind of different era now.
Yeah, no, that's what's up. What do you hope listeners most take away from the Atlanta Is podcast?
I would say for me, I just hope that people realize that there's so many more stories to tell in Atlanta, but just about the South in general, and that this hopefully sparks folks' curiosity, listeners, but also producers and folks who are just in media in general, to keep telling these stories, because as fun as these 8 stories were, there were so many other stories we could pick. There are so many other from this time period, from before the 90s, from, you know what I mean, from today. I just hope that this like sparks people's curiosity to want to hear more stories like this, because I think they're important.
I hope that people walk away from this feeling like they are a part of the stories of their towns too. You know what I'm saying? Because I can't say this enough. Like, one of my favorite experiences about producing this show was talking to the quote unquote regular people. You know what I'm saying? Like, having episodes that featured people that just work a regular job. You know what I'm saying? They might be a business owner, but they don't have a high profile. You know what I'm saying? Just talking to regular everyday people, because at the end of the day, the city may be known for the stars, but it's the people that made these stars. Like, the people went out and bought the CD, bought the concert ticket, bought the t-shirt, you know what I'm saying, goes to their restaurant that they opened up, you know what I'm saying? It's the regular people that make a city what it is. So I'm hoping that these stories that we're telling inspire, you know, everybody that lives in Atlanta and any other place to be like, no, I'm a part of this story of my city too. I might not be famous, but I'm definitely a contributor to the history, to the community, and to how people look at this place. And it may inspire them to be like, well, let me go out here and tell a story too. You know what I'm saying? From
Yeah.
my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I could say this with authority because I'm the transplant of the group, but I think the one thing I hope people take away is that Atlanta's influence plays out in ways that maybe like expand upon like our previous ideas. I think as Outkast gets inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like we have this very particular image of Atlanta where certain things are cemented, but to your point, it's like some of the episodes complicate certain reputations, and then others talk about the ways that Atlanta's influence shows up in ways that maybe don't come to the top of mind, right? Like one of the most rewarding parts about reporting the Maurice Brown episode and how Drumline was made just as the school lost its accreditation is that nobody's really brought that story to the present day, where it's like you don't really get a Beyonce homecoming moment without Drumline being filmed at Maurice Brown first and incorporating all those HBCUs. You don't get Tyler the Creator fangirling over the Clark Atlanta band without that particular moment. So I just hope that expands people's ideas of where Atlanta's influence shows up.
Yeah. And with Maurice Brown, you know, losing their accreditation.
That is a hard word to say in the studio. Accreditation.
With them losing their accreditation just 5 days
Isn't that
after
crazy?
that
Crazy.
film came out, and the film had done so well.
And they were really thinking, once this come out, we
We were
to the top.
literally
Yeah.
pulling up like newspaper archives, pulling up the calendars,
looking at
and
the
then
dates.
aligning. It was like, wait a minute, one,
Because
2,
we
3,
both
4,
knew
5.
the story. Like obviously,
Yes.
Drumline is always on TV. I watch
Yeah.
Drumline, and obviously, I know the story. My great aunt went to Maurice Brown. I'm well aware of Maurice Brown's history. I don't think that I realized how close together that timeline was until we set out to tell the story, and we were like, wait a minute. Like there were people who were in Drumline one semester, and within a year, they're trying to figure out where they're gonna go to school.
And I remember a small tidbit that did not make it was like, I remember those things being that close, but I also remember that time because this was also around the same time that the NBA All-Star game was coming to Atlanta. I remember all the DJs and radio personalities on the radio was like, man, we gotta
save.
Kobe
everybody was trying to save Morris Brown.
They're just saving all these millionaires in the city this weekend. You know, they were calling people out by name.
Yeah, Tom Joyner, a lot of folks were really trying to band together to save Morris Brown at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel this way with like every project, but especially as it relates to Atlanta, the importance of like archiving, because I remember wanting to get tape from that and it doesn't exist, right? Trying to because with this podcast, we had to fact check so much of this stuff. We had to pull from so much archival material. And for a lot of it, unfortunately, it wasn't possible. So it's only due to the due diligence of journalists like yourself and us that we're able to make sure those stories make it to the future. So,
yeah.
And Maurice, you're currently cementing more Atlanta history. You just recently hosted Gunna's 5K run. Can you speak on that?
Man, that was a cool experience, bro, because, for the most part, hip hop culture, you know what I'm saying? You don't think about fitness.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it seems like there is a small wave of, artists and, even producers, too, just people behind the scenes as well. They're, starting to pay more attention to that and wanting to share those experiences. So, getting the opportunity to host the Gunna Wanna Run 5K here in Atlanta, man, I didn't imagine myself doing that, because I saw that he was doing it in other cities. So then, when they got here, and his team reached out to my run club, Atlanta Run Club, hey man, can y'all facilitate this, man? Because it was kind of chaotic in the other cities. We need some folks with some expertise and some resources. You know what I'm saying? So it's to be able to host that, I felt privileged and honored. You know what I'm saying? Not just because, oh wow, we're working with this celebrity. It's no, we are galvanizing people to do something good for themselves. And
many people showed up.
And it was not really a nice day outside.
No,
it was a cold rainy day.
What was it,
1,500 people showed up anyway.
So cool.
They could have easily been like, man, I ain't going to that, bro. You see the weather outside? These people showed up anyway.
I love it.
And ran and walked. You know what I'm saying?
Awesome.
Yeah. A lot of these people, this was their first 5K race experience. And shout out to my man Tyler, one of my club members won the race. I was like, wow. Hats off to us again, you know what I'm saying? So it's that was a cool experience, and to the point Christina and you just made, being able to cement those kind of moments in history to where it's oh wow, man, there was a 5K where Gunna, who has changed his life after that dark cloud over his head for 2 years.
I love the rebrand of Gunna.
It
is one of my favorite current stories right now. Is just seeing Gunna. He's always been dope, but the new audiences, wellness. The influencer girlies love Gunna.
And he's
now. You know what I mean? It's really interesting to see these new audiences really, really gravitate. I love it. I love it.
And I want to send an extra shout out to him, because he's actually doing it. He wasn't the celebrity that shows up. Yeah, my name is on the shirt.
No, it's authentic.
He showed up. He ran in it, finished the race. Everything, you know what I'm saying? He was out there with the people running, you know what I'm saying? Some of them lapped him, you know what I'm saying? But he lapped some other folks too, you know what I'm saying? He was actually outside doing it. He just didn't show up and get on the microphone and be like, oh, y'all have fun, So.
Maurice, if somebody would have told you back when you were, writing stories on Outkast for Ozone Magazine, or when you were covering, Pastor Troy at a show here in Atlanta, that years later you'd be hosting, health events for artists still within the culture, would you have believed him?
No, because I wasn't doing that.
We evolved.
I was smoking Black and Milds and drinking Jack Daniels and PBRs, you know what I'm saying? I was, doing that too. So, no, I would not have believed them. So I would have said, oh, that sounds interesting.
You would have been on Big Boy's tour bus instead of Andre's.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that's what's up. Do you guys have any shout outs that you want to give?
Ooh, that's a long list. But I want to shout out to everybody that unfortunately did not make the cut of the episodes, because we interviewed a lot of people. And then we had to whittle it down and all that kind of stuff. So I want to send a shout out to everybody that still was gracious enough with their time to come and talk to us for these episodes that unfortunately did not make the cut. You know what I'm saying? It's not personal. We just kind of had to do that thing that we hate to do.
Yeah, it was just part of the process, because it's we had a year to really report these out and make sure these stories were as strong as they could be. And sometimes it was just about figuring out okay, what information is so essential. And that's where like our editors like really came into play. They're like, are you sure?
Yeah.
And it's like, but like they informed, like everybody we interviewed informed us like every step of the way, because that was
gracious with their time.
right.
Yeah.
That's what we had to do as journalists, like, do our due diligence.
Yeah.
And then, are each of you working on something currently that you can speak on that you're excited about?
I don't know that I can quite speak on anything. I mean, I'm still always looking for fun and exciting stories to tell. In Atlanta, I still write for the AJC.
Yeah, but that's our
Yeah,
job.
we
like,
both
me
still
and
write
Jewel
for the
news.
AJC. I just did a story about a veneer tech being indicted under RICO. So,
Oh wow.
the stories
Wild.
continue, and it's never a dull day in Atlanta.
No, it's not.
But yeah, I'm just always looking for that story. Came up because I find veneers fascinating. Everybody talking about it on TikTok. I'm like, somebody should write that story. And then after a few months, nobody had wrote the story, and I was like, I guess I gotta write the story. So those stories, I'm always looking for cultural stories that just really help us explain how this city is and why this city is the way it is. Yeah.
Something I'm working on, it doesn't have anything to do with media, but in a couple of days, like me and my Atlanta Run Club teammates, we're doing this ultra marathon relay. We're running from here to Charlotte. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my God.
That should be fun.
That
How
would
many
be me
miles
on the
is that?
sidelines
About
with not a
300.
run.
Wow.
I would bring snacks, I would bring water, and I would hand them out. I would not
Y'all
be
be
running.
running like Forrest Gump.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Christina,
I have no clue.
you know?
TBD on so much. But yeah, to Jules' point, we're always looking for stories to report. And then we have one more episode coming next week.
Yeah, and then all the episodes will be out. Everybody can listen to the whole thing, binge it if you want to, and just enjoy.
That's what's up. Well, Maurice, Jewel, Christina, appreciate you guys pulling up, jumping off the porch with us.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
I'm 22,